be cut into lumber, they had to be cut and extracted from the woods. And anybody who's been to West Virginia knows that it is not a flat state. And that means that special means had to be used to haul the logs over very rough terrain. For a steam-powered sawmill in the late 19th or early 20th century, most of the logs would have arrived by train, and special technologies developed to enable special kinds of railroads to be built in the woods. Logging railroads were similar to any other railroad on which a train would operate, but they were meant to be laid down over rough, undulating ground, sometimes unstable soil, with a minimum of earthwork, with a minimum of level. Of course, some earthwork had to be done. There's only so steep a hill a train can climb, but it would mean rough, twisting track that could be laid down long enough to bring the logs out of a particular area and then picked up and relayed somewhere else. And there were special locomotives, geared logging locomotives. If you've seen a conventional steam locomotive, it's got rods on the side that drive big giant drive wheels that could produce a lot of power and speed, but wasn't particularly flexible. By putting the driving wheels into swiveling frames called trucks, and by using a system of gearing and flexible drive shafts to transmit power from the steam cylinders to the wheels, you ended up with an engine that could bob and weave over the track. And because it was geared in the same way that you can shift your gears in your car or your bicycle, you could shift the gears were, you couldn't shift the gears on a geared locomotive, but they were always geared low for slow speed but high power operation, which meant they could go up very steep hills. So, logging railroads were key to making a sawmill like the one here work, but there were also other things that had to take place. When logging just got started, as the sawmill and the logging railroads were either on their way or still under construction, logs could be cut and brought in preparation for that to different landing spots using teams of mules. They could chain the logs together one after the other, drag them over the ground. This logging operation used something called a splash dam, where on a stream coming off of a mountain, they built a dam out of logs with a little door in the middle. They'd let a certain amount of water accumulate behind the dam, stack up logs in front of it, and then release the water, and the logs would wash downstream to another place where they could be moved further by other means. There were, even with these unique and distinctive technologies, there were places that a log train couldn't easily get or efficiently. So the piece of equipment that was another piece of equipment besides the geared locomotives that was also important was something called a steam skidder, which was like a temporary aerial cableway. And it was the skidder itself was a series of winches mounted on a giant platform that ran on the railroad. Those winches operated a whole bunch of different cables, and there'd be one main cable going through the air out to a particular logging site, and they'd drop a loop of cable off that main cable, pick up a bunch of logs in that loop of cable, and then either move them through the air or drag them along the ground back to a loading site where the logs could be loaded onto a train. And so if the railroad ran along a hillside, the cableway could reach to the top of that hill or to the bottom of that hill, and all the way around in a radius they could just pick up that cable and move it in a circle around the skidder, around the loading site. Our sign shows a picture of where a skidder once sat. There's actually a pinwheel shaped scar in the landscape where that line was moved over and over again, and the logs were dragged over the ground repeatedly over and over again. That just made the harvesting and loading operation of logs that much more efficient. This was the technology that was in use for most logging operations in West Virginia and in other places in the United States as well, from the late 19th century all the way up until after World War II, when bulldozers and trucks became more commonplace.